All right. We are now joined by someone who knows as much as a New Zealander can know what's going on in Ukraine and has been committed to helping the people of Ukraine deal with the humanitarian crisis created by the Russian invasion for 3 years. His works have included raising, I think probably millions of dollars of now, getting ambulances or old ambulances, getting them repurposed and fixed up and sent to Ukraine. Last time I think we spoke about a specific project. It was building water heaters and heaters for civilians who've had their infrastructure destroyed by what is happening there. He's still working tirelessly in that regard. We're joined now by Tenby Powell. Tenby, how are you?
Good morning, Sean. Well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Hey, look, first up, just on a practical level, what are you guys doing at the moment? What's the big push for the organisation?
Well, look, it's Groundhog Day, really. You know, we get up and do what we do every day in the morning. The highlights, I guess, I'm a bit out of date now because we updated our stats late last year, at the beginning of this year, so it's moved on. But last count was about 2,300 evacuations of civilians and sometimes entire families. We've produced over 4,500 stoves and water boilers, as you mentioned. These are a recycling project fundamentally. We make them out of old electrical water cylinders where we access the core tank. And we've delivered, we've got 10 ambulances on the water at the moment, and that would be 35 ambulances. We've got a Road of Life program ourselves. So obviously general humanitarian and medical aid going.
And for that reason, Tenby, I wanted to talk to you this morning because you're not an armchair general or an armchair critic, and you've been involved in an organisation that in a practical sense is dealing with the real problems there. Firstly, in general terms, what do you make of, I would say, the diplomatic turmoil that appears to be occurring right now?
Well, it's been a heartbreak to the teams that I talk to in Ukraine, and these are people from all over, senior military commanders, senior government officials, civic leaders, directors of hospitals, you name it. And it's been a heartbreak to see what's happened at the Oval Office. But I think, what sums it up for me is Trump's closing comment where he says this is going to be great television. I will say that. I mean, the reality, no matter what you believe and how you see this, is that innocent men, women and children are being killed wholesale, and that the situation surrounding Ukraine's borders is a stark example of geopolitical injustice.
Tenby, would it be fair to say, and we do not know the exact shape of any peace deal negotiated strangely between Russia and the Americans, is it fair to say the feeling is it's not so much a peace deal that Trump's trying to negotiate, but a surrender for the Ukrainians?
Look, it's a commercial deal, and Ukraine cannot and absolutely should not accept an unjust peace that will subject them and quite possibly Europe, Sean, to the predations of Russia. I think it's really important to remember that Ukraine has had its sovereignty since 1991. And as a sovereign nation, they should be absolutely able to determine their own future. And I say to people, imagine if this was New Zealand. How would you feel if there was a country dictating to us what we can and can't do?
What alliances we could join?
What alliances we could join?
Is this a bit like us getting upset at the Cook Islands, Tenby?
Well, no, I think that's a bit different because we had an agreement existing with the Cook Islands and we were hoping to have a better level of communication. I think the wake-up call with the Cook Islands or anything else in respect of China's activity in the Western Pacific, Sean, is that we need to have a closer relationship and to have better communications with them on an ongoing basis. I think that would be the message that I would have received from that.
Tenby, I find it very interesting. In the last couple of weeks, I've been looking at Donald Trump, and I think many have, and in some ways admiring some of the changes he's made in geopolitics and in the culture wars around the world. But then it comes to this, and I guess a little corner of me thinks, I'm kind of hoping it's a cunning plan to hoodwink Putin at some stage down the aggressors at some stage down the road. Is there any chance that this is all a very, very smart plan to protect Ukraine and bring peace?
Well, one can only hope, Sean. I don't really know him. That's well above my pay grade. But his warm relationships with leaders like Putin and Kim Jong Un certainly fly in the face of those that believe in the importance of promoting democracy and human rights, particularly on the global stage. But look, I've said this so many times for probably 2 years now. It is time for the UK, for the EU to step up, and it does seem that both the UK and France and potentially Germany, with their new chancellor, are now going to advocate that exactly that happens.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if a positive has come out of this, and if Trump wanted to push the Europeans into taking more action in their own backyard, and as I said, shouldering more of the burden of NATO and security, that seems to be happening.
Yeah, it does. It does. And we've been hoping that the UK would do this for a long time. I mean, there's a very effective entity in NATO EU. And, the Germans came out, crikey, I think it was the end of 2022 now, saying that they believe that NATO EU will be at war with Russia sometime in 2025. Well, here we are in 2025. And whether that's likely or not remains to be seen. But there's no doubt that Russia does have very much an aggressive, imperialistic, desires around not just Ukraine, but further on, and they've made that very clear to the Baltic stations, countries particularly.
Tenby, have you met Zelenskyy?
I have not.
Okay. I'm surprised. I would have thought you would have, given your great works. It would seem to me
he's pretty busy, Sean.
Yeah. Part of this whole thing seems to have been a character assassination of him through social media and the sort of stuff that Vance did. And that does seem an attempt to really destabilise or weaken the resolve of Ukraine as a country, because he's very much the symbolic figurehead of what has been, I think, an heroic resistance.
I think he's been extraordinary. And look, at the end of the day, he was a duly elected democratic president. And everybody seems to have forgotten that. And he had, at some stage, quite some margin. Of course, that's going to wane during a war, a full-scale war that is wearying and tires everyone. And look at Churchill. I mean, at the end of World War II, Churchill was sacked. And, this could well happen to Zelenskyy. It would be, I think, a very dangerous thing to hold elections in the middle of a full-scale war, particularly given Russia's ability to influence. And we've seen that influence all over the world, and none the least of which was in the United States of America. So I think it would be a very dangerous move right now.
I see that the Prime Minister, Chris Luxon, over the weekend came out with a statement of solidarity for Zelenskyy and Ukraine.
He did, and I was very, very pleased to see that.
Does that make a difference?
Well, look, what does New Zealand make in any regard? The Kiwi Care team leaders based here in New Zealand, Australia, Poland and Ukraine have written an open letter to Zelenskyy. Now, what difference does that make? Absolutely nothing, other than to say that, having been on the ground there since May 2022, we just felt we wanted to say that we are still with you in the circumstances. And by the way, this was written before the, so-called Oval Office brawl, as it's been dubbed. This was written and sent to the ambassador in Australia, the Ukrainian ambassador, Vasyl Molodchenko, on the 24th or the 23rd of February. Things have only got worse since then. And I think it's really important that all countries, big and small, show some level of solidarity to Ukraine at this time, because it could be any of us at any stage. And I think, unfortunately, Zelenskyy was trying to say that. And English is a second language under the incredible stress that he would be placed in the Oval Office. It was probably a little bit of an unfortunate thing that he said in the way he said it. I don't think it was lost on anyone, the intention of what he was trying to say. And what he was trying to say is, imagine if this was you.
Yeah, and I think that's such a compelling narrative. Put yourselves, or put New Zealand in this position. But one does get the feeling, Tenby, whether or not there is method to Vance and Trump's madness, the world's shifting, the balance of political and geopolitical power and alliances are shifting somehow, quite fundamentally.